What is the forgotten adoption option? Many are aware of infant international adoption, where you hire an agency, often wait a long time, and spend tens of thousands of dollars. And then there's becoming a foster parent, where you may or may not adopt the children. But there is a third option, where you adopt children directly from the foster care system. I call this the forgotten adoption option. In fact, 30% of children currently in foster care are adoptable, and you don't need to be a traditional foster parent to adopt them. Hi there, I am Missey. After blogging my experience adopting a pair of biological siblings through the foster care system, people started asking me to explain the process to them. And it's difficult to navigate, but the families I mentor feel that knowing the barriers, the challenges, and what to expect has actually helped them persevere and pursue their dream of adopting. And while I would love to have a really big family, adopting thousands of children isn't exactly realistic, but I can teach others how. Whether you're trying to figure out how to get started, you're battling some doubts and fears, or maybe you know someone who wants to adopt, I'm here with resources to help others discern if foster care adoption is the path for them. And if it is, I have practical tips and resources for them as well. You can find all of these resources, which include my blog, 3 books, an app, and a classroom lesson at ForgottenAdoptionOption.com. However you found this podcast, I am so glad that you did. I want to extend an invitation to you to reach out to me to ask anything on your heart. My goal is to help every waiting child be in their forever family. And that's why I host this podcast. Welcome to the Forgotten Adoption Option podcast. In this episode, we will discuss what it's like to work inside the child welfare system. Darrell Missey is the director of the Children's Division for the state of Missouri. Hi, Darrell.
Hi, Marcy. How are you?
Good. A lot of people don't know that I live in Missouri because I was USOA Mrs. Ohio. So Darrell's actually from my state of Missouri, which is entertaining. We met through a season 3 podcast guest, Thea Ramirez, when we were both invited to a St. Louis Cardinals game in May to celebrate Adam Wainwright's gift through his big league impact organization to Adoption Share, which is the organization that Thea founded and leads. And that gift was to help children in foster care have stability, support, and love. And so afterwards, Darrell and I got both invited to be Thea's guests. We had this incredibly powerful, deep, and lengthy conversation about waiting children and Missouri's foster care system. While we watched a pretty epic game, I think there was something like 7 home runs. Does that sound right, Darrell?
7 home runs. I think it's a record for the Cardinals from, going back to 1915 or something, some ridiculous distance in the past since the last time they hit 7 home runs in a game.
I didn't realize that.
And they haven't hit many home runs since, I will tell you that. The Cardinals have been really subpar since that time.
We might need to go back because there were like a lot of fireworks. I was really impressed that they had like enough to like keep fireworking every time.
I'm surprised they were prepared for that.
Anything can happen, right? Anything can. So Darrell, as we kick off, I'd love to start with, I know you were not planning to work for like the state government in any way. And in fact, you were a judge earlier in your career. And I know some people are thinking, Marcy, you had someone else on your podcast like that as well. So this is like not an uncommon path as we're thinking through things. Commissioner Andrea Sanders also has a legal background in that. So can you share what led you into having a passion for children in foster care and ultimately what led you to lead Missouri Children's Division?
Well, it's a long story that I'll try to shorten as much as I can. So I was a young lawyer in Jefferson County, Missouri, a long time ago, and there was I was doing a general civil practice, trying a lot of interesting cases. But the thing that I got involved in were all these sad child welfare cases, because all of these sad people came across the street from the courthouse to my office, having concerns there. So I ended up going and trying to help those people as best I could. It turned out the judge was horribly unfair and the whole system was treating people unfairly. And ultimately, I decided I needed to run for judge. And I ran for judge and I beat that judge. And then 19 years later, I was still a judge, handling some of those cases and other things. And I was going to retire. I would have been 55 and had 20 years, which I think is really young to retire, but I was really young to have run for judge. And so I decided that we were going to go. All my children had moved to Florida. My wife's family was in Florida. My wife wanted to live in Florida. Everybody wanted to be in Florida. And I thought, I don't have to be a judge. And so I was going to retire and go. and so I was at the Judicial College in Kansas City, where I was teaching the Judicial College that year, juvenile justice, and I was on my way back, and the director of the Department of Social Services had asked me to come by and talk with him about child welfare issues and get my opinions. I came by, I gave him my opinions, and then he suggested I should be the director of Children's Division. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to retire. I got to get my 20 years and I've got to retire. And then I got to go to Florida and buy a kayak and do all those things.
Yeah.
And he convinced me that, this would be a great way to really, sort of put icing on the cake, as it were, to solidify the work I'd done in the child welfare system as a judge and to try to help things be better. And so I decided to do that. So my family was already in Florida. They were already gone. I'd sold my house and moved them, and they were gone when this all happened. So we decided that I would stay long enough to conclude this. So my family lives in Florida, and I work in Missouri, and I stay here a good percentage of the time, and I go visit them. And that's the way things are right now.
So you walked into a meeting ready to retire, have a conversation, like your home's already sold, and you leave that conversation staying in Missouri and kind of doing this like encore
Actually,
to round out.
I said, look, I'm gonna let me think about this. Let me pray over this. Let me ponder this. And I ended up I talked with a lot of people, and I talked with a director, a former director from years ago. This agency had like 7 directors in 8 years. I mean, it just or more than
a lot of turnover.
Yeah. A lot of turnover. And so the last director who'd been here for a while, I spoke with him and had an hour-long conversation. And we got to the end of the conversation, and he said, Darrell, I know what you're going to do. You're going to think over it. You're going to be very judicious about it. You're going to weigh it. You're going to pray over it. You're going to do all that stuff. Says, and you should do that. But after you do, I ask you to do this. At the end of all of that, I want you to ask yourself one last question. What happens if you don't?
Oh.
Yeah. You had this has been your life's work, and you have the opportunity to try to make this difference, and you did not do it. What happens? And what does that mean for the children and families of Missouri, and how will that set with you? I want you to think about that. I said, well, thank you. So I called my
sarcastic thank you. That wasn't a
thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I called my wife, and she said, so what did he say? I told her that, and she goes, oh no, we're going to do this. So we've been doing this. So I've been at this now for 1.5 years. I started in January of more than 1.5 years. I started in January of 2022. And we've really been moving things and trying to make things better and different. So we've been at it for a while now, and here I am.
Here you
I'm sitting in Missouri right now. I'm sitting in my office looking at the Capitol as we're on Zoom here together. I'm looking at the Capitol building and thinking, how in the world did I get here? But this is where I am.
Yeah, Darrell has an office in Jeff City. He has a nearby apartment. He was sharing there's no Wi-Fi in that apartment. So yeah, he's like in his normal, I guess, work attire. He's got a button-up shirt and a tie on. For people that are listening, you can kind of like envision what this is like.
I look much more professional than I will in a little while. I'll go over there and I will.
Yeah, well, we saw you at the Cardinals game, and you wear Cardinal stuff. So
this is
the first time I'm seeing you in your work garb. I'm wearing all black because that's basically what I wear in tech all day. So you're seeing me in a normal work garb as well. It works out. So back to the Cardinals game. When we were there, you actually awarded Adam and his wife Jenny a handmade yarn doll. I don't remember the colors. What were they? Orange?
It was red.
It was red because it's the Cardinals.
I make them in many colors. I've got a whole shelf of them over there, and they are in many colors. I make them in all different colors, and it was the Yarn Doll Award. So when I was thinking about doing this, I had decided to do this, and I'm trying to learn leadership. So I read a leadership book by a guy named David Novak, who was the CEO of Yum Brands, and that was Kentucky Fried Chicken and Taco Bell and Pizza Hut. And he turned those companies around, and then he got to write a leadership book, and it was called Taking People With You. And one of his chapters was about recognition, that you should recognize people in your organization and elsewhere when they do great things. So when he was the CEO of Kentucky Fried Chicken, he said, I'm not giving people a bonus. said, and I'm not going to give people, if they need more money, I'm giving them a raise. And I'm not going to do employee of the month, because then every employee feels like they should have their month. So instead, he was just going to throw meetings and recognize somebody for being great. And he would give them a token of his appreciation. And while at Kentucky Fried Chicken, what he would give them was a giant rubber chicken.
Which makes sense.
You give them a giant rubber chicken. And what happened is people began to covet the chicken. Everybody wanted one of those chickens. And so I began to think about that and thought, what could I give people? Some token of something that would say, you did something great for a child and a family. What would it be? So I began to think back to my childhood. When I was a kid, my mom had really severe bipolar disorder. My mom had a serious mental illness, which she worked through, and our family worked through. But at one point when I was 7, she had to be gone for 3 months. That's why I often think about these foster kids, because they deal with that separation. And I know a piece of that, just a little piece of that, because of that experience. And while she was away at the mental hospital, while she was there in 1974, she made yarn dolls for me and my sister. And I kept one of them. I kept my yarn doll. My mom gave me a yarn doll when I was 7, and I've still got it. It's in this office. And so when I decided I'm going to do something for families and for people who help families and kids, I'll learn how to make a yarn doll. So I got on YouTube and I learned how to make a yarn doll. Now, I'm not a crafty guy. I don't do this kind of thing, but I got on YouTube and I learned how to do this. I had to learn how to braid, Marcy. I had to learn how to braid. And so I make yarn dolls. And so Adam and Jenny Wainwright, because of their work, they adopted out of Missouri's foster care system, by the way, I believe. And because of what they were doing for
I think they may have adopted privately. I thought they adopted a baby privately.
They adopt private. But
they adopted. The whole point is they adopted.
They adopted.
Yeah.
But there was some involvement. There was some involvement here at this office, whether they did the home study or something, because people talk about it. They're like, "Oh, the Wainwrights, they're great." So we, just in recognition of the things that they had done, I gave Jenny Wainwright. Adam was supposed to be there, but he was pitching that night, so I gave.
So he couldn't come. Yeah.
Yeah, he was back there getting in the zone. I presented to her the Yarn Doll Award. What a delightful human being Jenny Wainwright was, and all of her family there. And down on the field at Busch Stadium. So it was really a great opportunity to highlight the issue and to recognize them for their good work. And I do that kind of thing everywhere. I mean, people on our teams, they get the Yarn Doll Award. A couple of months, somebody will get the Yarn Doll Award, and I'll post it on the weekly email that I do. And somebody from Springfield, a new worker from Springfield, handled a really difficult situation with a teenager a few weeks ago. She got the Yarn Doll Award last week. So that's what I do. I make them while I'm watching old movies on a DVD player in the apartment where I have no Wi-Fi. So.
It's amazing. So how many do you have right now in stock?
I'm guessing I've got about 20. It takes me about an hour to make them, and I'll just make them while I'm watching old movies that I go to the library and I get old movies on DVD, and I'll watch a movie. I'll make a yarn doll, and so it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to make a yarn doll, and I make them in many different colors: green, yellow, red, blue, pink.
Somebody's going to ask me for your link. We're going to have to work on that, Darrell. Like, I'll give you Darrell's information.
Yeah.
That's so neat. So as someone who has seen news headlines about social workers having really large loads and the roles having high turnover, and you even spoke of this in your own position, I'm kind of pivoting topics so quick, away from the happy over to like the real too, but it makes me wonder what it's like. You're leading a whole state child welfare system. Like, that's a really big deal. And I wonder if you can share with us, because I know you're an open book, tell us some of the hope you have about child welfare in Missouri, and tell us some of the realities that you face.
Well, what I told Robert Nodell, that's the director of the department who asked me to do this job, when he asked me to do this job, is I told him, I said, I think the system's kind of upside down. I said, we have a reactive system that's driven by fear, and you should have a proactive system that's driven by hope and evidence and best practice. And so it should not be this giant thing. It should be a more narrow thing that we can actually handle and actually help people. So we need to get upstream on these cases, where families are struggling and having trouble. We need to get up front in those cases and do prevention work and really try to help people. And and try to reduce the number of kids actually coming into care. But once they're in care, we need to, as you know, we need to work to get them home if and when we can. But on the back end of these cases, when they're ready to be done, we need to do the legal work to get them done and not let things linger. I mean, while we are doing this, it's like that family is on an operating table, you know, and it's like you leave them open forever. It's tragic and horrible. So let's move cases when we should. And so my hope is that we're going to reduce the number of kids in foster care, that they'll be here only when they need to be. They'll be here for less time because they will either go home soon or they will find a home soon. One of those two things. And that, you know, Missouri is out of line. Missouri is out of skew. So the national average for kids in foster care is 5 per 1,000, which the experts say is way too high. The United States is overusing this, right?
So if I'm like an educator, I have kids in school, you're saying out of every 1,000 kids in that school, 5 of them are currently in foster care?
Yeah, 5 of them are in the child welfare system somehow. They might be placed with grandmother, but they are in state custody. 5 of the 1,000. In Missouri, when I showed up, the number was 10.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're double the national average of kids in foster care. We had 14,000 kids in foster care, and to be at the national average, we would need 7. And we've got a workforce that's too small, so they've got these enormous caseloads, and you can't just go to the legislature and say, hey, double our number of people. They just won't do that. So what we did instead is we made a very tailored request for give us a prevention force to get in front of these cases and to try to help families stay together rather than taking them apart, and give me some lawyers so that on the backside of these cases, when they're ready to be done, we can get them done. The legislature did that. We don't have those people in place yet, but even, Marcy, just talking about trying to help people and trying to do prevention and talking about concluding cases when they're ready, just by talking about it and letting people know this is an issue and this is what we need to do, we have reduced the number of kids in foster care. When I started, it was 14,200. This morning, it was 12,850.
He just opened something official. It was like a Padfolio. What was that?
It's my calendar. I write on my calendar every Monday. I write on the calendar how many kids we have in foster care, because we should have 7,000. Missouri, a state like Missouri, should have 7,000 children in foster care. We currently have 12,850,
which is smaller than 14,000. That's amazing. Well, and the fact that
the trajectory is right.
Yeah, that is the right. That's amazing, and it's like kudos, applause, and incredible things, and I think kudos, applause, incredible things. Also, I mean, to get approval to create a new way to do things and to get people high. I mean, just getting the budget approved. I mean, Darrell, that's huge. Like, you got to go through so many ropes to get there.
And I credit Robert Nodell, our boss, you know, for advocating for it like he did, and the folks at the Division of Finance for really helping tailor what that should be. But the legislature in this state is serious. I mean, I think the people I've talked to, they're serious about wanting to help this be better. And so they put their money where their mouth is. Now, 100 people, we got 100 new people to do the prevention. That's a drop in the bucket. But what the hope is that that'll prime the pump. That will get us started. And as we reduce the number of kids in care and get caseloads where they need to be, when they get below where they need to be, we can then shift. We can then shift more people toward prevention, more people toward trying to help this thing never happen, and do a better job when it does happen of getting kids where they need to be when they need to be there. So I think it's a big, broad vision that will not happen overnight, but we're moving in the right direction.
Which is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And on top of that, like, I know you said 100 people seems like a drop in the bucket. And I'm sure when you spread that out across the whole state, it feels like, okay, that wasn't the most we could do, but it's a start. And I think it's super incredible, Darrell. And I think what was really neat, one of the things that you and I connected on, and Thea was so excited for us to meet that night at the game, is just how, I'm going to use the word progressive and innovative, you've been in this state to try new things. And I think that's, I love that our listeners get to hear about that, because I think some of our listeners are people in other states that are thinking, oh, we could learn from this. And others might have tips to share with us, or might even go into a career like that. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. So Darrell, some of our listeners are people in the child welfare system. They might be a social worker right now. They might work for Children's Division. They might be in an institution, meaning like they're teaching these classes. they have a heart for people. Some people are going into law, or maybe they're thinking about it. I know there's just so many possibilities in this space, but you've had such an interesting career doing very different things that have allowed you to make such an impact on people and families. And I'm curious whether you're talking to someone that maybe has a child soon to graduate that's looking for a career path, or someone that's like, it's never too late to start something new, or I'm already doing this, how can I advance my career? What advice would you give to us if we're given even an ounce of thought of, I might want to work in child welfare?
Be open to it. Be open to it. Be open to serve. Don't discount the idea that you can make a difference. I think that people think, well, I could never do that, or I would never do that, or I've got practical reasons not to do that. I've got all kinds of practical reasons not to be sitting here right now. But I came at this with a sense of calling. I believe, I believe people have that. I do. I mean, I, as a person of faith, am convinced that I'm supposed to do certain things, and so you got to be open to it and ask yourself, how can I serve? I mean, leadership. I wanted to be a lawyer. It wasn't my idea to be a judge, and it wasn't my idea to be the director of a division. I wanted to be a lawyer, and the right thing turned out to be something different. And just being open to it and willing to say yes and to serve. And a good leader is a good servant. I think all of the new modern trendy leadership books tell you that, but also a lot of old and wise scriptures tell you that too. And so I just encourage people to be open and to be willing to serve, and ask yourself, what's a good way that I can do my work and love my neighbor? I think that's a good way to look at it.
Should we also ask ourselves, what happens if we don't?
What happens if you don't? What happens if you don't?
I feel like you're going to throw that one back at us. Like, maybe you need to ask yourself.
What happens if you don't? Well, and I'll tell you, what went through my mind? What happens if we don't? Our trajectory was terrible. I mean, we were continuing to accumulate children in foster care. We had I think a feeling of despair, a view that we weren't going to help people, a view that the only way to help people was to dismember their families, that we weren't going to even try. We were just going to continue to accumulate children in foster care. I mean, the chart just, it looked like Mount Everest the way we were climbing. And the answer to the questions, what happens if you don't, is thousands of kids and families are going to suffer. And I thought, if I can do anything about it, I have to try. So here I am.
A lot to chew on. Our listeners usually stay on after questions like that. I'm always like, stay in there. Hold on, don't go, don't go away yet. Don't go away. I know that was heavy, but it's good. It's so good. And so, Darrell, we talked a little bit about children in the foster care system, and there being some that are, your words were, they were going home, and some will find a home. And so specifically that second group, those are going to find a home. So I want to invite you to speak directly to the children that really have the heart of this particular podcast. I hear from several of them, and primarily those that have aged out of the system, that say, man, I'm so glad you're having this conversation. And while I love hearing from them, I hate that the story didn't end differently for them, right? That they're cheering on the kids that are still in the system, but yet they didn't get to have that experience. And so I'm wondering if you could talk to kids that are waiting to be adopted, whether it's in Missouri, across the country, wherever these kids are, in your own city right now. I think right now in Missouri, it's about 1,500 kids. I'm curious, what would you say to them?
Hang in there, and be open to relationship. I mean, it's we put a lot of labels on things. We put a lot of labels on our relationships and on people's status. And do you have permanency? That's the word that child welfare uses. And people will notice I don't use it. I rarely use it, because everything in life is in flux. But what we can have is connection, and what we can have is a lot of really meaningful relationship. And whether that relationship is with a guardian, or with a parent, or with an adoptive parent, or with all of those things, I encourage you to be open to that relationship and be open to connection, and speak your mind. By golly, we had a great podcast. We do a podcast at Children's Division called We Are Children's Division. And we will have a podcast coming up where I spoke with Eugenia Wallace, who is the reigning Miss Black Missouri. She is going to be in the Miss Black USA contest coming up, and she was just a delightful person, and she aged out of foster care. I encourage you to listen to her story, because it is really fantastic. Because what she did was, well, first of all, people listened to her. That doesn't always happen, right? People listened to her, and she loved her dad. She still loves her dad, but he had substance issues, and so she ended up coming into care. And she stayed with a godmother for a while, and then somebody suggested, and she loves her, and then somebody suggested she could go to a foster home where she could be with other kids, and she said, okay, I'll try that out. And she did that, but she retained all those connections. And oh, by the way, she was separated from her brothers, and people worked it out that she retained the connections to her brothers. And then she had a much older sister who ultimately took her into her care, and that's who she aged out with. And here's how she viewed all that. I have all of those people. I have all of these relationships. And she credits, she's graduated from college. She wants to go to law school. She's working in a law firm, and she wants to go to law school. And she credits her dad for sitting down with her and watching law shows when she was little, and making her read encyclopedias. And she credits her godmother for being that good force in her life, and her foster parent, and everybody. She's got everybody. And what we do in this system, I think we make a mistake. And I think the people who are coming through this system, the young people who are living it, make a mistake when we say it has to be, we have to sever everything, or we have to cement everything. And we do that black and white, and no, both and. We should be doing both and. We should have our past and our future and our people, and we should be allowed to and encouraged to love everyone and build connections as much as we can. And so I encourage people to do that, and not to believe the narrative that you have to sever things. I think that's what's painful for people. And give folks some mastery, give folks some ability to speak their mind and follow their heart. So.
That's powerful. Who should we speak up to, Darrell? We're feeling stuck. Who would listen to us?
Well, I would go around the state, and I talk to our team, and I give this little talk. When I give it to our team, I call it the 10 directives. When I give it to people outside of it, I just call it the 10 things. 10 things to think about. Well, the thing number 4 is listen to people. Listen to people. And I tell people that who are people, and I list a group of people. And who are people? The kids are people. Their parents are people. Their foster parents are people. Even the lawyers and judges are people. They're all people. So listen to them. And I think that if you should speak up to your caseworker. Say, this is what I want. You've got a lawyer. You have a lawyer called a guardian ad litem. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, oh, I never met my guardian ad litem. I never met my lawyer. But Eugenia, she was like, my lawyer was great, and I could call her anytime. Well, that's what should happen. And so you should insist and say, this is how I feel. This is what I think. And if you don't know what you think, you should express to people that you don't know what you think and why, because there's knowledge in that too. I think be listened to, have a voice. I think that's my advice.
It's great advice. I thank you for that. I know people listening heard you, and I think we feel empowered. Darrell, this was so delightful. The time has flown by.
This is over.
So
this
much.
is fantastic.
I know. I'm like sad. This was so good. And I'm so grateful for not just your service, but the passion and the heart that you have behind seeing the vision and going after it, Darrell. We are so grateful to have you in Missouri.
Well, thank you, Marcy. Thank you for what you're doing. And people who are listening, who are considering adopting, thank you for doing that. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than taking in somebody and making them your own and loving them because they are your own, making that happen. 1,500 kids in Missouri are sort of disconnected and adrift. So you could make a real difference if you come and help. So I encourage everybody to do that.
Listeners, did you know that you've helped the Forgotten Adoption Option podcast rank in the top 30% most followed podcasts on Spotify? You are helping waiting children be seen, and you're teaching our nation how to adopt these children. You can help this podcast reach more future adoptive parents by leaving a review and continuing to share this podcast with others. You can even help others know that instead of Googling to try to figure out how to adopt, they should go to ForgottenAdoptionOption.com, where they can learn the step-by-step process, tips for enduring the journey, and I even have a children's book to celebrate the forever families all around us. It means so much that you took the time to listen to this episode. And on behalf of the 113,000 children who each has a name, a story, and dreams, and deserves to grow up experiencing the love and support that is found in a forever family, I thank you so much for caring.